Hello, and welcome to another AARP Arizona Happy Hour virtual tour. I am Brenda with the Arizona State Office of AARP. We are the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that is dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. With a nationwide presence, AARP strengthens communities and advocates for what matters most to the more than 100 million Americans 50 plus and their families: health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. AARP also produces the nation's largest circulation publications, the AARP Magazine and the AARP Bulletin. During this month, AARP will offer events and enriching experiences close to home and from your home that help you make connections and serve others. While our situations are different, our need for connection is universal. Now more than ever, we know that connecting with family and friends is vital to aging well and living longer and having happier lives. Visit us at aarp.org/AZ for more information. Thank you again for attending, and with that, I will turn things over to Marshall.
Folks, welcome to the show. Get ready to meet your host for the night, Arizona's very own hip historian himself, Marshall Shore.
Hello and good evening. I want to welcome you all to Arizona History Happy Hour. I am so happy that you can join us this evening. Oh my gosh. So my name is Marshall Shore. I want to welcome you all, whether you're watching on YouTube, Twitch, or even listening to us on Spotify now, because I figured that part out. So we've got a great show for you this evening. My name is Marshall Shore, and I am the host. And so today is September 21st. And when you look at Arizona past, back in 1981, is when Ronald Reagan, who had nominated Senator O'Connor to be the Supreme Court nominee, you know what? The Senate approved her unanimously, and she became the first woman to sit on the Supreme Court. Now, she was born in Texas, but her family had a ranch near Duncan, and so she then wound up moving into the Valley. And, you know, if you go to the Arizona Heritage Center out in Papago Park, they moved her adobe house onto that property. And so they do utilize it from time to time to do conversations to kind of move humanity. Now, it is also National Listening Day because, you know, listening promotes the importance of today, really shows, you know, it's an important thing to do, as well as just practice that art of listening. Whether you do it at work, at home, in social settings, it's an important skill, builds trust, reduces misunderstanding, and can help eliminate conflict. Now, it is also Mini Golf Day. You know, mini golf actually grew out of the 19th century, was originally created in Victorian Scotland when it was considered to be improper for women to raise a golf club above their shoulder. So they created this miniature golf. And, you know, today, people all over the planet play it, men, women, children, whatever. You know, one of my favorite courses up near Castles is up at Castles and Coasters up near Metro Center. It is also National Pecan Cookie Day, you know, for those tasty little shortbread pecan nut cookies that are so delicious. I dare you to try and just eat one. You probably can't do it. Now, it is also Free Queso Day. Now, queso really basically, you know, it's more than just cheese. It's a Tex-Mex favorite and really means chili and cheese. So I hope you got a healthy hosting of some chili today. as well as it is Gratitude Day, which is just a time where we can just all celebrate and be thankful and celebrate each other. Individuals, nations, organizations, we all have so much to be grateful for. All right. So what can you expect from tonight? Well, we've got a little bit of trivia coming up. We've got some music history, as well as talk about a little town in Arizona. And of course, there's a beverage, and even more important, a super special guest. But we'll have more on that in just a few minutes. So I told you my name is Marshall Shore. I also am known as the Hip Historian, which means I get to play with Arizona history. So, over this last weekend was the opening of the Sunny Slope Historical Society and Museum. They had their Legend City opening. We had Patrick Mann talking. They had one of the log flume rides that somebody converted a log into a hot rod. They've got a variety of things from Legend City, and even Blakely connected to Legend City as well. So that's a fun exhibit. So be sure and check that out, as well as the Tempe sign, or the Tempe History Museum just opened up their sign exhibit. I've not been out there yet. I'm hoping to get out there soon. I hear it's pretty cool. Coming up in just a little over a week, we have our 6th band book reading taking place at the Alwyn House. And coming up in early November is Grand Avenue Festival. They've been doing it for over a dozen years, celebrating Grand Avenue, which kinds of keeps reinventing itself and gets better and better. As well as early next year, we'll be doing Arizona Unzipped Volume 2, celebrating the 95th anniversary of the Orpheum Theater. And oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So, I guess I got a little lazy, but I'm excited. So I just got some bags and t-shirts from my friend who did the artwork, Dylan Proby. Just has a little shop down the street. And so I had him draw Charles Harrison. Now, that name may not mean anything to you, but he was an important mid-century modern designer. He also was a graduate of Carver High School. And so we did this shirt and bag. It has a QR code that takes you to a little story about him. So those will be going up on Etsy within possibly tomorrow, early next week. As well as we got some bikini things and some bikini lounge and Kontiki as well. So that'll all be going up there. Now I see folks like Ryan, Anita, and Deb have found the chat. You can also reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, email, or even via my website, especially if you have maybe an idea for someone who you think would be a great guest. And now we get to talk about the cocktail. And so the cocktail, PJ likes to challenge me, and especially with this name, it's the Boogeyman's Black Bat Sazerac, which has a great onomatopoeia. But so Bacardi Sevilla, which is an 8-year Puerto Rican rum, then aged in Sevilla orange barrels, Mephisto absinthe, Demarest sugar, some black lemon bitters, a little Peychaud bitters, and then lemon peel. And so he gives it to me in a nice little, he said it was coming along really nicely, and indeed he was correct. That is an amazing little beverage. All right. So now we get a chance to talk about Little Arizona, which is when we talk about something that's not Phoenix, not Tucson. And so we are talking about the town of McNairy, Arizona, which is founded back in 1925, has a current population of about 700, just almost 800, and is in Apache County up in the mountains. And originally it was named for Benjamin Clough, who was a Mormon bishop back in the late 1800s. It then became named Cooley in honor of a trailblazer from Show Low. But then it was purchased by the Katy Lumber Company out of McNairy, Louisiana. And so they renamed the town. It was very much a company town. And the promise of steady work, good living conditions, and great weather lured 700 hopeful Black migrants to Arizona, not for cotton, but for lumber. And so eventually they basically used up the mountain of wood. And so a lot of those families dispersed and went north. And in the late 70s, the lumber mill caught fire. And that's when pretty much everyone else moved out. So I do indeed want to get out there down near Sholo, Pine Top, down in that area, and go take a look and see what McNary looks like today. And you can see some of the old buildings that are still there. All right. Well, now you get a chance to hear from someone else other than just me. So I am going to bring on my friend Kathy. Hello.
Hello there.
So I know you're used to having a whole crew working around you, but tonight you just got me.
That's okay. It's going to be just nice and relaxed.
Exactly. So Kathy, for folks who don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name's Kathy Blaze Jefferson, as you can see. I host a show called Desertwood Days, which has a focus on Arizona entertainment. And that is exactly where I met Mr. Shore on our show. He was one of my guests.
Indeed.
So we focus on entertainment, singers, songwriters, authors, historians, musicians, anyone that touches the entertainment industry. Other than being a talk show host, I am an actress. I've been acting and being a plus size model in the Arizona industry for about 15 years now. So I am all about entertainment and showcasing all the amazing talent that we have here in Arizona. Just like the history, we have individuals that go along with that, that's creating history right to this day with their music, they're sharing their stories in their books. So we want to make sure that we're getting that out there with our show, so that you get to know who all these individuals are. And one day they'll be on a Marshall Shores show talking about their history.
Well, I mean, the beauty is everybody has history, so that's kind of the fun of it.
Right. And I should say I am also a native of Arizona. I was born and raised in the South Phoenix area. So I'm excited about this, and I love what Marshall is doing here in the Valley, because that has always been one of my complaints and my pet peeves or whatever, is that we destroy our history here in Arizona. And there's been so many cases where things have been torn down, and we drive by it, or we just happen to hear that, hey, did you know that they tore down this building, or place doesn't exist anymore, and it's gone, it's left us. I mean, and that may have been a strong memory for someone, and it may have been an historical place that's been there for years and years. It really meant something to this state. But I just think that we need to get better at that. We need to get better at that.
And we're trying, and that's why I don't mind, even if a building is gone, telling the story of it, because those folks are important. We're only here living the life we're leading because of all the folks that have been here before us.
That is correct.
And so, all right. Well, we are going to do a little bit of trivia. Now, our trivia here on Happy Hour is a little bit different. And Nick, you're right. I mean, Legend City. I mean, there's not even a trace of Legend City. That's why you have to celebrate 6. So, Kathy, did you ever go to Legend City?
I certainly did. I mean, I loved Legend City as a kid. I certainly did.
I mean, I think it's like when you talk to someone who has been there, it's like they get all misty-eyed. Mm-hmm. I mean, having never been there, I mean, having a smaller amusement park nearby growing up, but still, I mean, Legend City holds a place in so many people's hearts.
Well, you know what? Growing up here, we didn't have a lot of, I want to say, fun things to do as a kid. And that was our Disneyland. So when we were able, if it was a school or a rec center or a parent or someone taking us there, I mean, that was a joy because that was our Disneyland, Legend City. And as you stated, I mean, you don't even hear people talking about it anymore. And there's probably so many people that it's just they've forgotten about it. But that was our joy here in Arizona, in the Phoenix area. That was our joy.
And that's why it was so fun getting a chance to just kind of hang out at the Sunny Slope Museum as they celebrated the 60th anniversary of that.
Mm, wonderful,
Yeah, I
wonderful.
mean, Vonda K. Van Dyke had a video she had sent in. She was living in Florida now and couldn't get away, but she
Oh,
sent a little video talking about how much she loved Legend City and how much it meant to her and the fact she went on to be Miss America.
okay. You know what? I have a little memory from Legend City also. I think that was one of my first dates.
Oh, I have a feeling you're not alone in that. It sounds like a great place to go
Yes.
on a date.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, but now we have SRP there. I mean, it's just no sight of it.
indeed. So that's why it's important to do things like this 60th anniversary and just to kind of keep celebrating it.
That's true. I agree.
And so, I mean, yeah, I mean, they actually had some of the videos. So with Pat there, they had some videos of some things that they had done at Legend City.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I hate that I didn't get to be a part of that. I would have loved to be a part of that.
Well, the exhibit is still up, I think, at least through December, if not even more.
Okay.
So it's not a huge exhibit, but they've got some of the costumes the staff would have worn and some just really cool little items.
Okay. I'll get that information from you later.
Indeed. All right. So now with trivia, it's multiple choice. You can keep track of it in the chat. I know Anita has a special notebook. She keeps track of it. It's not about where no one's going to grade it other than you. So there you go. All right. So our first question is, what was South Phoenix historically known as? A, South Phoenix. B, cultural abundance. C, the home for the Black residents. Or D, Dark City. So what do you think South Phoenix was historically known as? It's one of those.
Yes.
All right. What was the name of the all-Black town in Arizona? Was it A, Buckeye, A, Allendale, C, Allenville, or D, Palmdale? So which one of those was the name of an all-Black town here in Arizona? All right, question 3. This was one of the first elementary schools built for African-American students. Was it A, Mary McLeod Bethune, B, Paul Lawrence Dunbar, C, Thew Elementary, or D, Mary Green Elementary? So which one of those was one of the first elementary schools built for African-American students? All right, question 4. In the 1890s, the park was called Phoenix Park. What is it called now? A, Harmon Park, B, Parks and Recreation, C, East Lake Park, or D, South Park? So which one of those do you think was originally called Phoenix Park and now it's known by a different name? All right, here we are at the halfway point. Question 5. What was the Arizona Gleam established by the first was the Arizona Gleam established by the first Black female-owned newspaper in Phoenix? Is that true or false? Was the Gleam newspaper established by the first Black female or owned by a Black female right here in Phoenix? All right. Question 6. Dr. Winston Hackett was the first African-American doctor in the state. Is that true or false? All right. Question 7. Actor Hugh Dane, born in Phoenix, was known for his role in what TV show? A. Big Mama's House, B. MASH, C. The Office, or D. All in the Family? So Hugh Dane, who was born right here, was known for what TV show? A role he played. All right, question 8. Martin Wright, born in Phoenix, Arizona, what is his profession? A. Football player, B. Soccer player, C. Wrestler, or D. Musician? So what do you think Martin Wright's profession was? All right, question 9. In the 1970s, Stan Stovall and Ron Brooks graced the television screen across the valley, and they were both raised in Phoenix. What was their profession? A. Actors, B. Singers, C. Television journalists, or D. Athletes? What career do you think they had? All right, and question 10. What park did Helen K. Mason work at? Was it A. Harmon Park, B. Phoenix Parks and Rec, C. Eastlake Park, or D. South Park? All right, well, you are all locking in your final answers for our questions. We are going to mosey on and talk a little bit about some Arizona music history, the Riverside Ballroom. Now, the Riverside Ballroom was a concert hall located basically on Central and the Salt River in South Phoenix. It was built in 1914 and was washed away by a flood, but then it was rebuilt. It became the home to music. National acts, local acts, a little bit of everybody would play there. But one of the unique things was about Riverside Park was they would have special nights. So there was a Hispanic night, there was a collegiate night, and Thursdays was known as Rhythm and Blues. And so they brought in folks like Fats Domino, Count Basie, Duke Ellington, even B.B. King, as you can see in the coming attractions. Sadly, it did burn down in the late 50s. It was rebuilt and survived into the 80s. But it lives on in the minds of so many folks, seeing so many amazing acts, and many of them having dates and meeting a spouse there as well. All right, so now we're ready for some answers. Are you ready, Kathy?
Yes.
All right, here's where the fun starts happening. All right, what was South Phoenix historically known as?
The home for Black residents. And this was due to prior to the 1960s, city policies banned Black residents from living or visiting parts of Phoenix north of Van Buren Street. So that's why back in the day, you would see the majority of Black residents, Black families, they lived in South Phoenix areas that was below Van Buren. And as of today, which affects today with the area of the zone, because that contributed to the area of the zone where a lot of the homeless are living now, because that's where everyone congregated at. So that is why South Phoenix exists, is because of policies that were placed on Black residents.
And you also had like Matthew Henson.
Matthew Henson, yes. And that was between Grant Avenue and Buckeye. That was a housing projects right there, where that was predominantly African-American residents that lived in Matthew Henson.
Indeed. And then you had Marcos Deniza, right, kind of catty corner to that. And so that was Hispanic housing. And
Marcos Deniza, yes. Matthew Henson was labeled as the housing projects for the Black folks. And Marcos Deniza was listed as the housing projects for the Mexicans back in the day. And then there was one off of, I don't even recall the name of it, off of 16th Avenue in Buckeye. There was a third housing projects. I can't remember that name,
Oh,
but
see, my South Phoenix didn't extend that didn't extend
yes,
that far
it
over.
that one was just like in the middle of a residential. It was weird. It was like placed in the middle of a residential area off of
Oh,
16th Avenue. Yes, that was a weird area, but I can't remember the name of the housing projects. But they had these little areas where they placed us back in the day in South Phoenix, and those were the three. And there was one also. They called it the East Side Projects off of, and I believe it's still there today off of 16th Street in Van Buren, over in that area. I think it's east of 16th Street, about
okay.
18th Street off of Van Buren. So they made sure they kept us in this area where we could be controlled at that time. And so when individuals would come from, say, Oklahoma, from the southern states to come here for a better place, this is where they would come. It's to the South Phoenix area. So that's how it got populated.
Wow. I'm glad it is no longer the case. People can live wherever they would like.
They can live wherever they want. I grew up in the South Phoenix area off of 19th Avenue and Southern.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, living out there, and I'm sure anyone that lived there, we had Circle K's there, we had a Jack in the Box, we had a McDonald's, we had one, probably two grocery stores, but we didn't have a shopping center. So as a kid, it was always another joy to be able to drive straight down 19th Avenue to Christown Mall, for those that remember Christown Mall.
Indeed.
Way, Marshall. My grandmother would have all the kids in the car back then. I don't know if we didn't have AC in the car or she just didn't turn it on, but we were all laying on each other, sweating in that 120 degrees heat. But we were excited
Oh,
about going to Christown Mall. Those were the days where you just sit in the car and just sleep because there's nothing else you can do.
exactly. Until you get that long distance up to
Right.
Christown. Oh my gosh.
So that was what we had to do whenever we wanted to go shopping. We would have to go way to North Phoenix to Christown Mall to go shopping because we didn't have one in our neighborhood.
And now that whole neighborhood has changed so much.
Yes. It has slowly changed because you have other individuals moving in. So there is time, it's time to start fixing it up. I mean, if it was the way the population of individuals that were, the census was still the same, I don't believe that we'd have the things that we have there now. Because
Wow.
it took years before they started to develop that area. And well, I can't believe I think we got a Kmart out there. That was the first store we got out there, was Kmart. And then I believe Walmart came. That was some years later, but we got a Kmart out there.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's great to see that it's changed, and the individuals that live out there, they have a choice. They don't have to leave out of their neighborhood to go shopping.
Right.
Another big thing was a pharmacy. There wasn't a pharmacy in your neighborhood,
Oh
so
yeah.
you would have to drive north to go to a pharmacy. Those are the things that were lacking in the area. A good grocery store that carried the things that you needed, a pharmacy to carry the medical necessities that you need. So in order to get those things, you had to leave out of your neighborhood. And, back in that days, they didn't feel safe leaving out of their neighborhood to go somewhere else where they weren't wanted.
Right.
So we're lucky nowadays, and we can't forget our history, our past, to see how far we've gone and to see how far there's still a lot of work to do.
There is very much still a lot of work to do. I agree with you there. All right, question 2. What was the name of the all-black town in Arizona?
The all-black town in Arizona was called Allenville. Allenville came to be back in 1944 when a man named John Allen, a black man, purchased 1 square mile of subdivided land from a Phoenix realtor. Can you believe that? That was probably, that was news. I mean, this black man purchased this land, even though it was just a small piece of land. But to even for them to allow a black man to purchase this, that was, I know that was huge back in that day, and especially in the 40s.
Yeah.
So many of the first settlers were seasonal workers on the cotton farms. As for the population, most say it lingered just below 400, between 60 to 70 families. So it was still small back then. And this was in an area now that we call the Buckeye area.
Oh.
So it's this little place that's around the Buckeye area.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Indeed.
That is amazing.
All right. This was question 3. This was one of the first elementary schools built for African-American students. And it was?
Paul Lawrence Dunbar. This was my grade school. I went to Dunbar.
Oh.
It is still there. You drive by 7th Avenue and Grant, you will see Dunbar on the southwest corner. It is still there, even though the housing area has changed. They upgraded they tore down the red brick housing projects that used to be there. Was called Matthew Henson that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, the Hope 6.
Yes, and that is who you saw most that went to Dunbar was the people that lived in Matthew Henson. They felt like, you know what, that school was a part of the housing projects because it was that close. It's like there was some areas where you stepped off your porch, you're almost in the school grounds. That's how close the school was to the housing projects. So this was one of the schools that they built for the African American students. And if I can tell you, back then, I remember that's all the students, when I went there, that I saw they were African Americans, because they still had us segregated back then from the second projects that we spoke of, Marcos Deniza.
Mm-hmm.
They had a school exactly the same way, Lowell Elementary, which was housed right into that housing projects. And that's where the majority of the Hispanic students went to, was over there at Lowell School. But since at that time, Dunbar only went up to 5th grade. So the individuals that were graduating for 6th grade, they had to go over to Lowell for 6th and 7th grade.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's where I went. I went to Lowell.
Okay. See, and there I was at Harmon Park, like right in the middle right in the middle of both of them.
Yes.
So.
And these are things that still exist today. They're still there. We still have young kids being brought up into these neighborhoods. And even though we're not segregated as we were then, we're still segregated, because it's still in that manner policy. The majority of individuals that live in that area of, say, Matthew Henson area. I think they do still call it Matthew Henson. The majority is still Black residents. And when you go to the other side, which is so weird, you go to the other side, you have the Hispanic residents. So we're still separating by, let's say we're separated by 7th Avenue is what it is. They're separated by 7th Avenue.
Right.
That is what's happened. They're still segregated in some way by a street.
So, I mean, it's like, and right now it's like with light rail going in down there. I think that will continue to change that whole area as well.
Yes. Oh, that's going to be very interesting.
I agree.
That's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. Very interesting.
All right, question 4. In the 1890s, the park was called Phoenix Park. What is it called now?
It is now called East Lake Park. And isn't it amazing? That park has been there. There is so much history in that park. If those walls could talk, I I just can imagine what they would say to us. I mean, it's changed so much. The neighborhood has changed so much. It's gone through so much through the times where we were having riots. I mean, it has changed and gone through so much. But even though it's changed and gone through so much, it still represents the same thing. A group of people who were fighting for their rights and the change in a community that wasn't accepting them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Indeed.
yes, East Lake Park was developed by Moses Sherman specifically to give passengers a pleasant place to wait for the next train. You imagine that? That was, but it turned out to be much more than that. Booker T. Washington spoke here in 1911 at the Great Emancipation Jubilee, and W.E.B. Du Bois also addressed a crowd at the park at a later date after attending a reception held in his honor by members of the Second Colored Baptist Church. In 1914, the park was purchased by the city of Phoenix and became East Lake Park. So that's when it became East Lake Park in 1914. And there's just so much more history. It has served as a place, a home place to celebrate MLK Jr.'s birthday until it outgrew the space. The annual Juneteenth celebration, many civil rights rallies. This is the place that is known for that type of atmosphere, that type of energy in Arizona. East Lake Park is that place. And that is one thing we have to keep the memories alive at East Lake Park, not just for us, for the next generations, the generations to come, because there's lots of history in that place.
Exactly. All right. The Arizona Gleam was established by the first Black female owned a newspaper in Phoenix. Oh my gosh.
Wow, can you believe that?
That's amazing.
Yes, and that is true. And her name was, and I hope I pronounced it right, Ira Hackett, was the first African American female newspaper owner in the state and only one of a few in the country at the time.
I was going to say, exactly. I was thinking probably one of the few in the country. That's amazing.
Yes, and this weekly newspaper, and it was a weekly newspaper, was originally published at the Hackett's home by an almost, get this, all female staff.
Wow.
Right, isn't that amazing? Including associate editor H.M. Fritz and reporters Tilly Turner, Ruth Phillips, and Consuela McHenry. That's awesome. That is just so much awesomeness. An all-female staff.
Yeah.
Right.
Until this, I had never heard of the Arizona Gleam, and now I want to go back and take a look and see. I can only imagine it's like the type of things they'd be reporting on would be a little bit different than the mainstream press
Yes,
because of the
yeah.
communities they were serving and the fact that it was all women.
Right, right.
Wow. That's incredible.
It is incredible. It is and you know what? This still shows that there is so much more work to do. This was and I'm sorry, I don't have the date handy right now, but back in the day, this woman created this magazine, this newspaper, an all female employee staff. Where do we have that at today?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, where are those voices today?
Right, right.
That's really interesting. All right. Dr. Winston Hackett was the first African American doctor in the state.
And I had to add this because Dr. Winston Hackett was Ira's husband.
I was wondering if there was a relation.
Yes. This was an African American doctor, and he was still working as a cotton picker so that he can raise the money to pay for his licenses here in Arizona. So once he raised enough money and became a doctor, he didn't only serve Black patients. He also served other patients of other races that didn't have the money to go other places to get the care that they needed. So he could have said, oh, no, I am only going to serve Black patients. But he didn't. He was a doctor first.
Right.
So I wanted to add that in there, and because I had never heard of him either. And to say this is the first African American doctor in the state. And the picture, that's the place of where he served his patients.
Wow. I mean, and what a powerhouse. I mean, you have the newspaper coming out. And someone asked if it's archived. It looks, I think it's actually the Smithsonian has it. So there is Chronicling America, which is an early newspaper database. And I think they have the Arizona Gleam in there.
Yes, yes.
So,
and you know what? That was a sign that, back in the day, they did what they had to do to get where they needed to be. He wasn't too educated to still go out and pick cotton to to make the money he needed to get his license. Today, I would go pick cotton so that I can do this. Today, our mindset is so different than the mindset that they had to have back then.
Right.
So different.
And such a completely different environment they were dealing with as well.
Yes. Because even as a doctor, Dr. Winston Hackett, he was still a Black man.
Mm-hmm. All right, question 7. Actor Hugh. So you got me thinking Dr. Hackett. All right. Actor Hugh Dane, born in Phoenix, was known for his role in what TV show?
He's known for The Office. Actor Hugh Dane was an American character actor. He was best known for playing Hank, the security guard on the television sitcom The Office from 2005 to 2013. And because I'm in the entertainment industry, I had to throw some entertainment in there.
Oh, of course. I know we have some more coming up, which I think is great.
You know what? And that is one thing that was the hardest thing to find, is that a lot of it, the one that I found, can you believe the first celebrity artist that I found from Phoenix, Arizona, they had it listed as Jordan Sparks. And I know there's others, but Because I'm an African American and I'm talking about African American, I wanted to find Black entertainers. And the only one that I could find was Jordan Sparks,
Wow.
that was actually born here in Phoenix or in Arizona.
When you look actually born here. Okay.
Yes, that was what I was going for, that were actually born here.
Ah. So, I recently came across a photo of Bob Ennis. So he was a celebrity assistant to Dr. Richard Ireland. Rusty Warren went on to publish a newspaper, a Scottsdale Life entertainment thing in the late 60s.
Oh, okay.
And it's like confirmed. I've been researching him. Sadly, I think he has passed on, but he had quite a, he had also had other contacts in the celebrity world as well.
Okay. And you know what? I'm sure if we keep digging and digging, we will find more.
Well, and that's the thing. And so that's one of the reasons why I love doing things like this, is because every time we mention somebody, it's like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, but what about this person?
Right. And I never knew that Hugh Dane was born here in Phoenix.
I had no idea.
No, not
That's
at all.
fascinating. Wondering, it's like, well, we should find out where he was born and maybe make a little plaque.
Right. That's true.
So that people will know. So they don't think the first person that was born here was Jordan Sparks.
Right. Of course.
Because that wasn't that long ago when she was born here.
Right. Not at all.
All right. Martin Wright, born also in Phoenix. What was his profession?
He's a wrestler and he goes as the boogeyman.
Indeed, the namesake of our cocktail tonight. I mean, and we had quite this wrestling scene here. I mean, down you had the Madison Square Gardens down on 7th Ave and like McDowell. Actually, I think Van Buren.
Yes.
Down in that area where there was lots of wrestling going on.
Yes.
And so, indeed. All right. Question 9. In the 70s, Stan Stovall and Ron Brooks graced television screens across the valley, and they were both raised here. And what was their profession?
They were both television journalists. You know what? Growing up here in Arizona, I don't remember seeing a Black journalist on television. I mean, there's only one that I mean, we can all say we remember seeing Linda Williams for years as a kid. Okay. But I cannot say that I saw Stan or Mr. Brooks on television at all. Wow. I knew nothing about these two gentlemen, but I'm sure back in the 70s, I mean, that was a tough job for them. That was a tough job for them, especially being the only two Black news journalists, reporters. I just can't imagine what it was like for them.
Well, and so Dr. Brooks, who does a lot of hydroponics, his father was a minister at Southminster.
Okay.
And last name is Brooks. And so I'm wondering if it's like, I should throw him a note and say, hey, is there a family connection? Because his family came from the East Coast.
Oh, okay.
And so when his dad came into Southminster, he noticed disparity in terms of services of what other neighborhoods were getting for their kids versus what he was able to get for his kids in his neighborhood. And so he had friends who had been working on this test project of Head Start.
Okay.
So that's how we became a hub of Head Start.
Right.
Was through a Black minister in Southminster. Okay. As well as those kids getting also then access to a preview of Sesame Street.
Right.
So I've been after Dr. Brooks to come on the show as well to kind of tell some of those stories, which I'm sure would be fascinating as well.
I'm sure.
So
these TV anchormen can you believe they retired last year, 2022?
Wow.
Yes. Yes. And speaking of them being the first in the 1970s, I couldn't find another Black anchorman doing my research. What about yourself, Marshall?
No, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, when you start looking at representation on TV, I mean, very minimal.
Right. Yeah, that's true. You mean these two? I think a lot of times, these two guys, they fought hard to get to the position that they were. And I don't know if it was that they weren't visible enough, that young Black men would say, hey, I can do that too, or that's what I want to do when I grow up. Were they not visible enough? Is that what it was?
Wow.
Because, and you think about it, that's a lot of time, most times that's where our youth, they decide, I want to be a football player, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be this type of profession, is because it's something that they saw and it's inspired them. So this still shows that there's so much work to do in the form of inclusion.
Very much so. And then, oh my gosh. So, question 10, what park did Helen K. Mason work at?
The park we've been talking about, East Lake Park, the park where all the history was.
Yeah.
But one thing that also was so exciting about this lady is that she founded the Phoenix Black Theater Troupe.
Indeed. And so that's why I made sure to include a photo of the building.
Yes.
Which is a Helen K. Mason Theater.
Yes. And going backwards, before we even get to that, when she worked at East Lake Park, what she did there was developed programs, art programs, music programs, so that these children had the experience and were being exposed to the artistry.
Right.
So her going on being a founder of Phoenix Black Theater Troupe, that was just next to come, because that was what she was already doing at East Lake Park.
I wish I could have gone to some of her early just kind of stage things that she was doing. That sounds incredible. I mean, just such raw emotion of poetry, of so much performance art just happening at East Lake Park.
Right. And Black Theater Troupe, as you see, the beautiful building that they have there off of Jefferson and about 13th Street?
Mm-hmm.
They are continuing her legacy and what they're doing at the theater. And that is awesome to see that they are continuing her legacy. A lot of times when you have new representatives, the agenda changes. So it's great to see that they're continuing what she started with this theater. I love it. I love it.
And doing so, I haven't seen their season yet for this year. They historically are kind of one of the last ones to get their season out. Mm. So I haven't seen it yet, but I'm intrigued. I mean, I've seen some amazing productions.
Yes, I was in a couple of productions at the small productions at the theater. But
wow.
I want to also point out that, do we see the trend there? This is a theater that was born in the area where we were forced to live, off of south of Van Buren, off of Jefferson and 13th Street. So the legacy continued, even though, sometimes people force you into an area, but you make the best of it and you create your legacy in that area. And that is what she's done. And that is what the theater is continuing to do. And I think that is what I see a lot of individuals are doing in, say, Harmon Park, Matthew Henson. those areas that were listed as areas where you don't want to go, you don't want to live there because it's drug infested, it's this, it's that. But in reality, that was this agenda that was placed on a group of people to keep them quiet, to keep them in this box. But these were families living there. These weren't people that were out there causing trouble, mayhem. These were actually families that were living there, raising their children. I mean, there's always the bad apples no matter where you live.
Right, exactly. There's always going to be a bad somebody who's on the other end of the spectrum.
Right.
But I mean, that was my experience at Harmon. It was such a great community to be in.
Yes, and if I would say anything, I would say that I would want people to remember those areas is that these were places where I'm going to give you a quick, and I want to get off. My paternal grandparent traveled from Oklahoma, and the great grandparents in the 40s, and they end up coming to Phoenix. And they lived off of, say, 15th Avenue and Hatley over in that area, which is still in that area where they were supposed to be. And these were families. My great grandfather was a pastor. My uncle was a civil rights advocate, which he later moved to Vegas, where he began to be a civil rights advocate to help, because that was during a time where they didn't want the blacks to work on the Hoover Dam, when Hoover Dam was the new big thing and they needed workers. So he had to fight for the rights for the black workers to be able to work on the dam. So I would say I would want people to remember those areas as an area where people were raising their families. They were families. Squash all this negativity about this was a bad area, because it wasn't a bad area. There was lots of history there that all of us could learn and grow from.
Oh, I mean, it was a great neighborhood. I mean, as I were talking earlier, when I was working at the library, we were going through a major remodel, and at one point the contractors accidentally left all their tools out. They came back the next day and everything was right where they had left it. Nothing had been moved. And they were shocked. They were like, oh, this is the only place this could have happened. Like anywhere else in the city we would have gone, all of our tools would have been gone. I mean, they just care. I mean, that was my experience. They just cared about the community so much.
Right.
That where everybody was watching out for everybody. I mean,
and that's what happens. And that's my memory, is that everyone knew everyone. Okay, you know this woman's children. If they're out there acting up, you're gonna put them in line, and their mother would be okay with it. Okay, so I mean, it was so much different than our times now. A lot of times we don't even know who our neighbors are, but that wasn't the case back then in those days.
And one of the things I love is so the Phoenix Public Market started off at Harmon Library in the driveway with a card table. And so there were backyard gardeners, and so they would bring like a clump of onions, some lettuce, and things like that. And so that was the first bit with Cindy as she was breaking into the whole farmer's market. The first one.
Wow.
So, I mean, I love the fact that it came out of the fact that it was kind of a food desert. There wasn't much there. As you were talking about going to a grocery store, there wasn't one nearby. So getting fresh produce was really hard.
That's true. That is true. Or because you'd have the family. See, back in the day, when we were younger, we had, let's say, down baseline, and there would be areas where you would have I don't know what they're called. I can't think of the name right now, where they would grow vegetables, and you would go and you'd buy fresh vegetables, greens, tomatoes, and different things like that. And these individuals would go there, or they would go to places where they would pick different types of vegetables, and they'd come back into the city and they would sell them at low prices so that the family would have those types of things. And it's just like the version of the market, farmers market that you're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. There's a lot of history there. There's a lot of history. My mom tells a story about when her and my grandmother them used to go. There was an area where they would go and pick pecans. I'm like, oh my gosh, if only today. Do you know how expensive pecans are today?
Indeed. That's amazing.
Yes, yes.
So
So
then, do you remember
these
the Japanese flower gardens?
I did. Is it
So
what?
further down than where you were, so it would have been on Baseline, a little further over in the street side was the
Uh,
Japanese, all the Japanese.
okay, yes, I do remember. That wasn't it past 24th Street?
Yeah.
Yes. It was see that was the area where I mean you'd have the orange, they'd sell the oranges, the grapefruits, all the fruits and vegetables and I mean the flowers. I mean that's where you would find all that stuff. Now
Ah,
we have concrete and buildings.
indeed. So
Yeah.
I see Anita's already. I always like to kind of end with how did folks do? Just because I think it was always interesting just to kind of see. I mean, and so oh wow. So Anita got 4 out of 10 and her husband got 10, 2 out of 10. Oh, 2 out of 10 for Maggie. So very cool. So Kathy, thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of your childhood,
You're
just some of the history, especially in that South Phoenix neighborhood that people just don't realize what an amazing place it is and has been.
I know it is. And you know what? And not only that, we have some amazing people here in the valley. You know what? Let's just remember that, we forget about our history, we forget about our people on our day-to-day life. Let's not forget about our neighbors. Say hello to someone. You never know who may need it that day. So
Exactly.
just let's be nice to each other.
Completely agree with you.
Yes.
All
Thank
right.
you for having me tonight. It was
Oh,
such a pleasure.
my pleasure. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye. Oh my gosh, Kathy, thank you so much. That was really good. Oh my gosh. And I love talking about South Phoenix because I mean, it was such an important place for me. And so, okay, so now From the Vault is something that you might drive by. And so I thought, kind of going on the theme for tonight, one of those things that people drive by a lot, the Herberger Theater. And if you go by, you'll see the Waddell statues of the women dancing. But if you continue going on a little further south, you could easily come across more statues that are kind of obscured from public view, at least as part of Carver. So these Waddell statues are based on 1963, the church bombing and the death of 4 African American girls in Birmingham, Alabama. And so this was really slated to kind of show what they could be as they would grow up. Now, if you go to Paradise Valley to the the Unitarian Universalist Congregation, you'll see another set there as well. And so I enjoy being at Carver and kind of looking out the window and seeing these women peering back in to a school that meant so much to so many people and is now a museum and cultural center. I think is so important. All right. So now you'll see why I always say if you're watching on Facebook, be sure and click on that share button because we are having so many good stories talking about Phoenix, about Arizona, just sharing those stories. And next week, we are reprising an episode with Frank Barrios, who just passed away. And so he wrote the book on Hispanics in Phoenix and did so much more. And so I'm looking forward to getting a chance to revisit his episode. That is next Thursday, 7 o'clock. I will see you all here. Now, also, if you have any questions, story suggestions. If you didn't get them out in the trivia or in the chat session tonight, you can always reach out to me. I always love to give a shout out to Chris and Cole, who did that great little intro video, as well as PJ, my cocktail advisor. And as we say good night, I'm going to leave you with the video we did actually to promote Grand Avenue Festival coming up in early November. Have a good night, everyone, and I will see you all next week.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Grand Avenue. My name's Taylor. I'm meeting with Marshall Shore, the hip historian. Let's check it out. Hey. How are we doing?
Good. Come on over.
All right, sweet. What's going on here?
Oh my gosh, so excited because we are talking about Grand Avenue Fest on November 4th.
What's going on November 4th?
Oh my gosh, starting at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
It's going to be a celebration of the arts, of music, of food, of local businesses, all right here on Grand from Roosevelt to Van Buren. So much fun.
This
happening.
sounds so exciting. Tell me more.
It's a family fun free event.
Everybody loves free.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be going on from Roosevelt to Van Buren,
Okay.
all along Grand, a celebration of arts,
Wow.
community, local shops,
Bringing
music,
everyone together.
artists. I mean, there's going to be so much live stuff going on. It's going to be so much fun. Food trucks, art cars, glass blowing. Pretty much you name it, it's going to be here.
Okay,
So
awesome.
many performers going on, and oh, looky here.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be so much fun. You gotta be there.
I will.
Here we are on Grand Avenue in downtown Phoenix. We're on November 4th. We are going to be doing Grand Avenue Festival.
This is so exciting. I hope everyone comes out. It's a free family fun event. I'm going to be there. I hope you are too.
11 a.m. after parties. It's going to be the day that goes and goes and goes.